In this episode, we're going to set our budget and purchase our components.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to more of the hands-on PC build. That's right. In this episode, we're going to go ahead and define what our budget is. Then more importantly, we're going to give you a chance to see how we would go about purchasing our components. So here on my computer, we are pretty much on the same website that we left off in the last episode. We're at Newegg. And we are going to now kind of define and set what our budget is, and then see if we can purchase components that will adhere to that budget. And that's very important. So what I've gone ahead and I've done ahead of time is I've kind of put together my own builds, and I did them based on feature functionality, but more importantly on what the budget is, and I'd like to show you those to you. You can do this yourself as well. If you'll go up to your account, you can create your own wish lists. And I have a high performance list, a general performance build, if you will, a general productivity workstation, and then just a basic system. Now, I will tell you, when you look at the components that I put together here, the prices are a little bit more restrictive than what we've seen on the build, than on this Build a PC site. Because let's face it, if we're building to a budget, even if the budget has a good bit of money to it, you still don't want to just spend your money just frivolously. So what I've done is I put together a few different builds. Our basic system, you will see here, is running about $372, which is considerably lower than what we've seen according to their PC, building a PC. You can see that our productivity workstation, about mid-range, is going to be about $700. And then what I did is just kind of kept doubling these up to come into a, hey, basic bar none system, middle of the road, and then one that's got a little bit more horsepower, and that one tops out at about $578. Now, the system that we're going to build, that you're going to see us build in later episodes, it came in at around $842, give or take, depending on when you buy. You could see this at around $742 because of the motherboard happened to be on sale. So that's a great thing. Always pay attention to the sales. Always pay attention to the deals when you can. So we're going to go ahead, and what we're going to do is we're going to set our budget at about, let's say, $900, and we're going to see if we can purchase the components that we need. Now, I'm going to go ahead of time and tell you that I'm going to pick an Intel platform. You can more than welcome to pick an AMD platform, and what I'd like to do is show you how to use the filters that the website has here to kind of narrow down the components that you want. All right, so let's go ahead, and we're going to take the main website, and what we're going to do is we're going to select computer systems. And when we get into computer systems, the next thing, oh, you know what, Titus, take this back from the beginning. Sorry, we're not going to computer systems. We're going to components. Yeah, let's go ahead, sorry, but let's go ahead and start that over. No, don't worry about the cuts.
I got you. Ready, set?
Yes, yep. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to more of the hands-on PC build. That's right, in this episode, we're going to be doing the main thing, which is the fun stuff, and that's purchasing the components. But in order to do, prior to doing that, we want to make sure that we determine what our budget is going to be. Now, we're on here at the bench, we're on the same website that we left off at last time, and that's newegg.com. And we're going to be using this, to kind of walk through how we're going to determine what those features are. Now, I've gone ahead and I've done this ahead of time and kind of done a couple little price points on different build levels that I wanted to do. Remember that when you use what we've shown you in the past, this Build a PC, it's good for a general ballpark figure, but I like to tighten up those prices even a little bit more because let's face it, people have to build on a budget. Even if it is a more higher end and a higher performing computer, you're still going to try to budget your money appropriately. Now, one of the great things that I love is anytime you select a computer component, let me show you here. So I just clicked on components there, and we're going to just, let's say, put an i5 processor. All right, and you can see that it kind of fills that in for us, right? And when we select that, what I'll find is that we have a series of the i5 processors. Now, when I select a processor, I'm going to select this i5 9400 Coffee Lake. What I like is that you can, prior to building your computer and purchasing stuff, you can either do add to compare, like you've seen I've done with a couple of different cases here, or you can add it to a wish list if you believe that's the one that you want. So don't be afraid to use the compare item so that we can, in fact, let me go ahead and clear these off because you can see I was actually kind of price shopping. What I can do is add to compare, and notice it adds that in the list, but then I can also come back here and we'll just hit the back button and I can say, okay, well this i5 processor was $168, but this one seems to be, well, what do we have here? $199. So what I can do is I can select that, and then over here I can add to compare, and then it'll give me the ability later that if I want to do a compare, we can have a side-by-side and see what the features are like. So that's a really good option. In fact, if I kind of hover over that add to compare, let me see if I can hover right so you can see it. I can choose compare, and then what it does is it puts these processors, and it even gives you recommendations, their recommendations. And notice that that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to recommend the highest level processor, right? They got an i7 over here, so certainly if you wanted to spend the money, you definitely could. But in this case, they didn't just say, okay, we're going to give you the highest priced one because we'd like to make more money. They actually gave us one that's a little bit less. It's square in between the first two that we were comparing. So I want you to know that you can do the comparison as well. But remember that your budget is very important. Let's go back and let me show you my wish list that I have. I've already brought the page up ahead of time. Again, just select your wish list there. You can do that from your account if you've already created your account. So for me, I just hover over my name, and here are my wish list, and I've already created a couple of PC build lists. All right, you're going to notice that I have a basic system, all right, and notice that it clocked in, and again, I did my price shopping here and got the features that I wanted for a basic system that's really just web browsing, and then we also have one that's more like a productivity workstation, a little bit higher performance, and it's about double the price, and then I just went with that mindset, doubling the price again for a higher performance, and we get a little bit more in this one. So let's go ahead and let's see. Oh, and by the way, the build that we're going to be doing, it clocked in at around $900. All right, well, I want to show you how you can do this, put your own build together based on your budget. So I'm going to basically say that our budget is going to be around $900, and what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to go through, select the components that you want, put it in your wish list, and then it'll be just up to you to add them to the cart and buy them for your own build. All right, so we're going to kind of follow my lead of about $900. Let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to tell you that in order to do this, we'll just go back to the main page. And what we're going to choose, instead of computer systems, we're going to go to components. We want to start out in the right section here. And notice that there are a lot of core components. It's important to remember that the processor and motherboard, these are two key factors in any build. And remember that our build is going to be around $900, and we want to try not to exceed that, and we want to get kind of that mid-range productivity workstation for about $900. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I want processors. Well, what type of processors do we want? We're going to go over to CPU processors. We'll go ahead and click that. And then it's going to ask us over here, what kind of processors do we want? And we could shop by desktop. We could do server or mobile. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shop according to Intel. You, out there at home or wherever you're watching this from, you can certainly choose AMD. Not going to get into that AMD versus Intel. If you want to use AMD, they're good processors, and they a lot of times they'll run a little bit cheaper. But it's really up to you. So I'm going to go mid-range, again, because I don't want the highest of the stack, right? Because I don't need that high performance, and I want to kind of stay and match my budget. So we're going to choose i5, all right? And then what's great here is we have the ability here to essentially filter Not just i5, not just Intel, but what type of i5 do you want? All right, because you can go back as far as second generation. Now, if you're going to want to build something that's going to stand the test of time at least for another year or so, you certainly don't want to go too far back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck all of the Intel i5s, and we're going to do an i5 ninth generation, and we're going to go, and by the way, at the time of this taping, which is beginning of July in 2020, the 10th generation is the current processor. So they're going to be a little bit higher priced right now, and because I'm going to try to adhere to my budget, I'm not going to go with the 10th generation, I'm going to go with a generation just behind it because it tends to drop the price a little. So we'll do Core i5 9th generation, and we're going to choose Apply. And then what it's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to filter that out by the specific processor. In this case, i5, and all of these should start with a 9 and then whatever the designator is. Usually the first number past the dash tells you what generation it is. So if it's a 10400, then that means it's 10th generation 400 model. So you can see here that all of these across the top are 9600, 9400, 9600. Notice, so that's i5 9th generation. And it's a real easy way to kind of tell which generation there are. And we've got quite a few options, all right? Now, I could go to the compare products, right? And we could add these to compare. And you can see that we've kind of already done that. We've added these and we've kind of compared the two. And if I wanted to, we could go back to that. And this is kind of what I do when I do a build. Okay, so why is this one 168 and why is this one 199? A lot of times what you're going to see, that's because of whether it has integrated graphics, which means that if you want to save a little money and you don't want to get a dedicated graphics card, because in my case, I'm not going to be using this for graphics, I could get away with that, then I don't need to get a processor that supports the integrated graphics, or I mean, that does support the integrated graphics, rather, I should say. But if you want a dedicated graphics card, then you can go with one that doesn't have it. So that's a lot of times it's the difference between integrated graphics and not. And let's go ahead and scroll down and see if that's the case. All right, looks like for the most part, these are all the same. Looks like there's a little graphics difference as far as the frequencies go. You can see that the max frequency on this one is 4.1, 4.6. So for $199, a little bit more than this $168 one, you're getting just a little bit higher level performance out of it. We're still see 6 cores, again 6 threads, operating frequency 2.9 versus 3.7. So again, you're getting a little bit higher performance. Now, I'm going to try to stick within our budget. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the first process of this by adding this to my wish list. All right, and it's going to ask me, what list do I want to add this to? I'm going to say this is a new list. All right, and I'm going to say PC build demo, just kind of demo what we've got here, and we're going to choose add. All right, so that's where typically where I'll start, around the processor itself. So now that we've added that, the next thing that we have to do is we have to figure out what motherboard we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the home just by clicking the home button up here, and we're going to go back to components. And this time we're going to go to motherboards. And notice that the motherboards have some different categories, and notice AMD and Intel. Again, we've got to marry the two. We've got an Intel processor, we need an Intel board. So we'll choose the Intel boards here. And now it's really based on the socket. So you have to pay attention to the socket that your CPU supports. And we can do that. I happen to know off the top of my head that it's an 1151 socket that this supports. And if I'm not aware of that, I can go back up here to my wish list, PC build demo. This is the one that we've just used. And we can select that. And we can find out what this processor actually takes for its socket. All right, and I can see it says LGA 1151. Well, that's good news for us because we were in the ballpark of where we needed to be. So what I need to do is I need to search for socket type LG 1151, and we'll hit enter. All right. Now, it is also important to make sure that you pay attention to the generation that you're using too, because I'll tell you there's two 1151s. And if I remember right, and we're going to find out, I believe it's not the LGA 1151, it's the LGA 1151 300 series. So I'm going to go ahead and filter for both of these. All right. And we'll go ahead and we've got to make our budget. So, but I still want a little bit of performance too. So one of the first ones I see here is Asus. All right. Well, it depends on what model you like. I like Asus. I like Gigabyte. I tend to kind of steer away from MSI. Just a personal preference. That's okay. If you like MSI, by all means, go for it. But now I can get a little bit farther down the chain, and what we can do is say, you know what? I just want to see the Gigabyte and Asus boards only, and choose Apply. All right, and we're going to let that go, and once that applies, what it should do is filter out our motherboards by the appropriate vendors that we want. And I'm seeing a couple here that I already like within the price range. I see 169, I see 179, and I see 209. I like these 169s and 179 better, but the other thing I would also look at are the reviews. Reviews are very good to get information based on what people think about this board who have already purchased it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I see 51 reviews and I see 112 reviews, and they both got about the same star rating. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this on our compare list. Since we've already got our processor, I'm going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the processors off of there, and we've added our motherboard. We're going to add 2 of our motherboards, and then we're going to kind of compare the 2 of these just by adding that check mark and then down here hitting compare. All right, and once we hit compare, it's going to go ahead and it's going to bring up what these boards, what these boards truly mean for us, and that's what we want to find out. All right, and you can see here that they both support the 1151 300 series, and that's 8th and 9th generation Intel Core. See, some of the 1151, the LGA 1151 sockets were backwards compatible. Keep in mind, notice this right here, and this is one of the things I remember about this, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we had the 300 series. Notice it says not backwards compatible with older generations of LGA 1151 CPUs. So I'm glad we filtered that down and we've got these. But now we got to look at some of the supported technologies. They both have the same chipset, which is required, but then it's some of the features that the motherboard has, right? So you can see that looks like they both have DisplayPort HDMI. What else do we have here? So yeah, so a lot of these really look pretty much the same. Number of memory slots, and you can see the different memory variations. Notice that they both support 64 gigs. They're both dual channel memory architecture. And then really where you're going to start to see more money in these is notice that this one has a lot more of the PCIe features in its slots than this one does. And that's probably why one of the reasons that we're seeing the price variation on this. So I'm going to try to stick to my budget here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this one at 169 to our wish list. And we'll choose add. All right, and let's just go ahead, just for the heck of it, we're going to continue shopping, and we'll look at what the price of our wish list is here in a second, and we'll see if we can hit our budget. Now, the next thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that we have the RAM that we need. And we can actually look right here in the memory standard of the motherboard, and we can see that it takes DDR4, and this OC is all overclocking. I don't plan to overclock this motherboard, so what I'm really looking at are these numbers right here. And what I see for both of them is 2666, 2400, and 2133 DDR4 memory. That's the megahertz, the speed of the memory. So I'm going to go ahead, and what we'll do now is, now that we've got that, let's go ahead and let's go back to our components by choosing our little breadcrumb trail. And this time we're going to go into memory. Next big thing that we need for our memory, and we're going to filter it by desktop memory. And remember, we need a DDR4. All right, I definitely want it to be in stock, so we're going to change that over. And remember the speed that we were looking for. We were looking for 2600. So what I did is just expanded out the speed, and we're going to filter down through, and we're going to find 2666. And then we will apply that. Now, the next thing we have to figure out is what is the capacity of the RAM that we want? And I want to make sure that we have 16 gigs of RAM. Now, when we do this, we could get one 16 gig stick. That would be very expensive. A single 16 gig stick is more expensive than 2 8 gig sticks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I want 8 gigs per module. right? And I want 16 gigs, so I filtered out exactly how much memory I want. What is the quantity? Going a little bit farther than that, you can also filter by who you want the vendor to be. So for instance, if I want Corsair memory, I can choose Corsair and G.Skill. We'll choose G.Skill, got to be able to click a button, and choose apply, and it narrows down my search even more. But we could go even farther than that. We could say, I know how much money I want to spend. I want to spend around $100 on this memory, so I can choose $100, and then we could choose apply. All right. Now, I've seen some good memory in here that I really like. I'm going to end up going with a Corsair Vengeance memory. It's around $100 here, and you notice there's 120 and there's 109. I'm going to go ahead and choose the $109. Again, I like the Vengeance brand, and it's the 16 gig package, and it's $109. So that's right about the price that I want. No need to compare. If you wanted to compare your memory, you could do that. I'm going to add that to my build. And then we're going to continue shopping. All right, so far we've got our motherboard, we've got our CPU, and we've got our memory. Next thing we have to do is we have to look at our storage. So I'm going to choose our breadcrumb trail, go back to components, and the next thing that we're going to go ahead and look at is we're going to look at our hard drives. Now I'm going to actually get a solid state drive, and it's internal. It's an internal SSD. We don't need the enterprise level. And what I want to see is somewhere around 500 to about a terabyte, depending on the price. And you can get some real interesting capacities here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do, let's say, just somewhere between 276 and 500 gigs. I want to try to keep it right around the 500 gig. And I like Samsung, I like Western Digital, and I'm going to choose Show More, and it'll be alphabetized, because there's another one that I like too, and I didn't see it in the list, and that's Crucial. Let's see, yeah, and there's Crucial, and you can see they've got a lot of them there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that filter. And now what this will do is this will filter through these brands that I want. And you'll notice that right away I get this 500 gigabyte MX 3D NAND 2.5 inch SATA drive. And it's at a decent price. And I can tell you that's about what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose that. And we're going to add that to our wish list. That's about $70, all right? And we're going to choose our PC build demo, and we'll choose add. And now we've got our storage. Next thing that we have to do is we have to buy our power supply. All right, I'm going to buy the power supply, and there's a reason I'm saving the case for last, because if we're following form factor, I know it's an ATX motherboard, I know it's an ATX case, so we should be okay getting an ATX motherboard, ATX power supply. We should be good with just getting an ATX case at the end. So we're going to go ahead and get our power supply, and we'll do the same thing that we've been doing. We're going to go to components, and we're going to go instead this time to power supplies, and we don't need a server power supply, so we're just going to check the regular power supplies. And I know that the form factor is ATX, but more importantly, I want the ATX 12 volt. I want to make sure that it's 500 watts, and I got a couple other things that I like. I like a lot of these brands, but for sake of brevity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose EVA, and I'm going to choose Cooler Master. These are two of my favorite brands. And then I'm also going to make sure that for power efficiency that it is 80 plus certified, and we're going to apply these filters. And hopefully we can get the right 500 watt power supply. And then sure enough, there we go. We get a Corsair Master Watt 500 watt power supply with a power efficiency certified, 80 plus certified, if you will. So we're going to go ahead and we'll view the details on that. And we're going to add that to our wish list. And we are almost done with our build. Hopefully we've gotten close to that $900 budget. If not, we're going to have to trim back some of the excess here. But we're going to choose add. And we're going to continue shopping. Last but not least, we've got to go ahead and we've got to put our exoskeleton that brings the whole system unit together, and that's going to be our tower, our case. So let's go ahead. We're going to choose our little breadcrumb trail. Remember, at any time you can do a search inside of the little search field up there. I'm just showing you where some of these components are and easier ways to navigate if you are buying them. And we're going to go to computer case. We're not going to really worry about gaming cases. I don't need all the fancy lights. If I happen to find one that has fancy lights, okay, that's fine. And for me, we could do the full tower, or we could do a mid tower, or we could even do a micro ATX tower. I'm just going to go ahead and do an ATX mid tower. And when it comes to this, the one that I like is Cooler Master. And again, personal preference. You, by all means, choose what you like. And I'm also going to choose in stock, and I want it to be new. I don't want it to be refurbished. So we'll go ahead and we'll apply that filter. And we've got a couple of different options that we can use. Personally, I don't really care too much for the LED lights. It's a great flare thing. If you're building a gaming computer, that's perfectly fine. I like something like this that is just real sleek, slim design, very basic, and a black color there too. Again, nothing flashy. And this gives me some 2.3 Gen 1 USB ports, gives me an internal or an external 5¼ inch drive, and it gives me 4 3.5 inch internal bays. So plenty of room for what I want to do. So we'll go ahead and we'll add that to our wish list. And now, once we add that to our wish list, the drum roll is we can come in here, view our wish list, and find out, did we meet our budget? And you can see that we came in at a couple $100 under what our set budget was. Now at this point, what I could do, if I truly want to spend $900, I could always go back and I can add a graphics card. Even though our CPU has the integrated graphics, if I wanted to add a graphics card, I could add one for about $120 to maybe $200 and still come right around our budget. So what did we do in this episode? We showed you how to set your budget, meet your budget, and then how to acquire the components. And at this point, it's just turning your wish list into a cart, essentially adding them all to your cart, and clicking Buy Now.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.